and welcome to the Rants of Izzo pre-show here on Spreely TV. Good afternoon, it's Wednesday. Rants of Izzo show here on Spreely Media. Rants of Izzo is brought to you by Spreely TV and Spreely.com every Monday through Friday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. Now, if you want to look at Spreely and everything they have to offer, there's a little hamburger up in the corner here. You click on this if you're watching on the live show or the recorded show, video-wise. You podcasters just have to listen to what I'm saying. And you can see we have news, we have Spreely TV, video clips, social media marketplace, all this good stuff. And if you want to catch content like the Burn Pit podcast, which is on every Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and the Burn Pit boys are here today, you can check them out on Spreely.com. Also, don't forget, today's brought to you by Create Holistic Health and Wellness at createholistic.com. You got a problem with your guts, or you got a problem with, like mine, it protrudes a little bit too much. Stepped on the scale the other day, 240 pounds. I got to lay off the TRT. If you're tired of going around in circles with fad diet, merry-go-round, Create Holistic can help. If you go ahead and you send an email to, where's she at here? To Maureen, she's going to give you a 20-minute phone consultation to sit there and find out what your health problem is with your gut and give you a hand. Make sure you tell her you heard about her on the Rants of Izzo show. See, the point of this pre-show is to get all the housekeeping out of the way so I don't have to talk about any commercials or shit during the show. And if you're not following our new law enforcement content, Officer Dominic Izzo channel is right here. You can follow him on YouTube. I've got over 268 videos breaking down things from shootings, the George Floyd case, sometimes when cops do good shit, a lot of times when cops don't, like this police chief who admits you don't have the right to remain silent on traffic stops, a lot of stuff. We are live every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, where you can call in and you can have a conversation. Other than that,
I'm going to use that phrase as well.
Yeah. You got your bell, I got my bell. Hey guys, yeah, we're gonna have bell contest today. All right. Ridiculous. All right, let's have a show here on the Rants of Izzo on Spreely TV.
Prepare yourself.
The opinions of the host and guests on this show are exclusively just that, opinions. That means that they shouldn't be the cause of your state of being offended. Why does everybody get so butthurt?
Okay, let's go. Ready, go!
Sit down, shut up, and pay attention. This is the Rants of Izzo Show with your host, Dominic Izzo, from porn to politics. We touch every third rail we can find. You might want to put your headphones on so your mom can't hear this. It's been called the most entertaining 60 minutes on the internet, and it starts now. Let's do this.
All right, it's Wednesday here in the Rants of Izzo show on Spreely TV. Burn Pit Podcast boys are sitting in. You can check them out every Monday night, 4 p.m. Eastern here on Spreely. They have some great guests, always talking about some awesome topics. But apparently they're the biggest Jew haters on the planet, so they need to be canceled, crucified, and all that. We're going to jump right into this because it's probably going to go long today. And if you're watching on the live version, you can probably catch up. If we go long, there'll be the replay you could see long. Yes, Monday I had on Ilan joins me, and he joins me every other Monday, and I get along with him well. We both started with martial arts content. He's got a great channel that I support, and that was our link. I had him on the couple days after October 7th happened of 2023, and Israel was attacked, and I asked, what's with all this Jew hate? Because I saw it was online, it was like crazy. And then, you know, if you have anybody who's been following the show on Wednesdays, it's kind of dedicated to a real big social issue that I openly said I don't care about, but I'm being forced almost to pick a side. And it's like if you have an opinion and your opinion is not the right one side wants you just criminally canceled, and if not Just, Scotty, okay? What's Scotty doing? Oh, okay. Oh, Scott, we're more important than whoever was just talking to you there. Tell them this is some serious shit.
Yeah, we're just getting some instructions from our producer there. But thanks for having us on, Dominic, as always.
Wait, you have a producer? You
Maria.
sons of bitches. I've been asking for 6 years for one. Anyways, let's talk today. Elon won't go on your guys' show, and he won't talk to you. And every time that I try to have a discussion with him about things I have concerns with, he brings you guys up. So fuck it. I'm going to throw him under the bus today. And since he won't debate you, but you're more than welcome into the documentary he's filming, I thought I would just, because I don't have the answers, I would play some of the questions or statements he had and let you guys just take them on one-on-one, because a lot of people were disappointed Monday with a personal response, and there was no real answers that were given. So, I mean, I'm not wasting any time today. I want to go right into this. These are some clips from Monday's show that I'm going to play the audio from, and I'm going to let the Burn Pit guys have them, because I don't know if I asked the right questions. I don't know if I presented the right issues. All I know is that I was more or less told that I was stupid for not doing full historical search first before forming an opinion, and my opinion is wrong. How can my opinion be the way that it is right now? To which I have a question for something after I play this first opening clip. So here's portion number one. Now, my first question for when it comes down to the camp's purposes, what was the purpose of concentration camps?
Well, first of all, okay, so number one, jumping into like the specifics of the Holocaust, we can do that. I'll just answer your question quickly. Polls, right? Actually, if you just go to Auschwitz, this is the problem. All of this is very easily answerable. If you go to Auschwitz or if you watch the Nuremberg trials, again, it's the most well-documented event in human history. They had water reservoirs. They used them as water reservoirs.
I want to stop for 1 second, because if he is watching this, I'll give him the question 2 weeks in advance, because he'll be on in 2 weeks. He kept saying that the Holocaust is the most well-documented event in history. This is my question to him and anybody else who is of Jewish disposition, where they believe that it is not sane to question an event that is the most documented history. The Bible is the most researched book on the planet. If anybody's ever seen the movie or read the book, The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, who actually, it's Willow Creek Church, which is, it's about 200 yards from my house right here. He was a journalist and an atheist for the Chicago Tribune. Long of the short of the story is his solid research in the 70s and 80s proved that Jesus Christ existed. He proved eyewitness testimony. He proved that all of it is the most researched factual stuff on the planet. So if that's the case, then why don't Jews believe Christ is God? That's my question to everybody else. If the Bible is the most researched, authentic, legitimate document in history, then why are we supposed to believe that the Holocaust 100% question or happened without question, but Jesus, well, he's not God? So that's a question I pose for anybody else out there. I want to continue, because then I'm done.
Red Cross was coming to investigate genocide. This is known. The Germans admitted this post-Holocaust. It's in documents with them testifying to this. And they said, okay, well, we're going to use it as a pool to hide the fact that we're committing genocide. They converted it to a pool. Guards were using it too as pools. If you're going to hide genocide, you're obviously going to put things in place to hide genocide. The problem is if we start jumping into every single specific, which you can do this on your own. And I won't have an answer, by the way, to every single specific question that you uncovered in every propaganda film. The easiest way to uncover the truth, because I asked you, did you see the Nuremberg trials? Have you investigated the Nuremberg trials? You go, no, I don't actually, have a dog in this fight. And I'm like, well, did you watch movies like Shoah? Did you watch all these documentations? Do you know that Germans themselves, the highest ranking Germans, testified to this? They said we were just following orders. They didn't even deny the Holocaust. Germany itself does not deny the Holocaust. So, I mean, at some point, we can debate the nitty gritty things that I might not have an answer to. I guarantee you I can find you an answer. In fact, I'll say this, you motivated me.
And he goes into his documentary there. I'll open that door for the first part if you guys have any response whatsoever.
Okay, so first of all, saying that the Bible is the most researched thing, that could be true. Proving that somebody lived 2,000 years ago, you have no video, you have no audio evidence. It's difficult to prove that, but we can prove other people lived, right? But prove to me Julius Caesar lived. There's no pictures of him. I don't see any videotape of him. There's no audio tape. Okay, obviously I'm not saying he didn't exist, but he did. Okay, that's irrelevant. But what is relevant is this whole Holocaust thing. Now, he said high-ranking German officials admitted to it. Did he mention any of their names?
Nope.
Okay. Did he mention any of their testimony specifically?
No.
Okay. I have researched the Nuremberg trials. And I'm just going to jump right into it. The Nuremberg trials was under the IMT, which is the International Military Tribunal. I believe it was the first military tribunal ever enacted. And it was post-World War II, right? So that being said, there are articles in that charter, which means the rules. Now, remember, the Nuremberg trials are not American trials. It's an international. They make their own rules. Now, I did bring something, so I want to make sure that I get all of this correct, because this is, and I want everybody in the sound of my voice to research this. This is the IMT, the International Military Tribunal, their rules under Article 19 and Article 21. I'm going to read Article 19 of the International Military Tribunal. So, hold on real quick. I have to find it here.
The question of this being the most documented event in history.
Go ahead.
Where would he get that from? The idea that this is the most documented event in history.
That's bullshit. It's just a bullshit phrase. It's conjecture. Who says that? Proved it's the most documented. Well, I can even agree. I'll make the argument and agree with him. It is the most documented. And all the documentation shows that all of these wild claims that they make are false. It's so well documented, Dominic, that these claims, not only are they false, Dominic, many of them are fucking mathematically and scientifically impossible. End of fucking story. You cannot deny math. You can't do it. I mentioned this before, Dominic. I said, Dominic, do you believe that the Battle of Gettysburg happened? And you said yes. I said, so then, Dominic, you believe that 10 million Confederate soldiers were murdered in the Battle of Gettysburg by Abram A-1 tanks and Apache helicopters? Well, no, Matt, that didn't happen. You're a Battle of Gettysburg denier. See how that works?
That's the problem I had with any question. I get his emotional aspect in it, but I'm not going to be called a Holocaust denier because I question things. That's a fucking problem with any debate and argument.
The Holocaust denier label is a label they use to polarize, to make you discredited out of the gate. And let me mention one more thing. Never in our history, in any country, has any revisionist, the ones who they call Holocaust deniers, they asked hundreds of times to debate anybody on all these specifics. And none of the exterminationists, the Holocaust believers, never accepted any debate. Ever. Why is that? Tell me, if it's so well documented, Dominic, then why in 17 European countries, in Canada, in Russia, in Australia,
Germany,
and European countries, and Israel, of course, do they fucking throw you in prison if you don't agree with it? If it's so well documented, why do they threaten jail time if you disagree with some of the specifics? Okay, and again, anybody can look into that. There are people in prison right now in those countries for saying the 6 million number isn't correct. There were no gas chambers. Prison. No other event in history, anywhere on the planet, do you go to jail if you don't agree with it. None. Okay, now let me get into the charter. Article 19 of the Nuremberg, this is their rules. Article 19, the tribunal shall not be bound by technical rules of evidence.
Oh,
and shall admit any evidence which deems to have probative value. So they don't even require evidence. Also, let me tell you, during the Nuremberg trials, that the defense attorneys, when showing that the Allied forces were guilty of war crimes, they didn't want to hear it and they threw them out completely.
It's like hearsay. It's like when they just admitted, or I can't remember the name, the cop who's out in my area who was convicted, Drew Peterson. He's sitting in prison because of hearsay, got him convicted on killing his third wife.
Right. So they throw out anything. That, by the way, and I can show evidence and I can show videos of them admitting it. British, American, and Russian soldiers admitting to war crimes. Admitting to it on camera. I can show anybody all of this. If anybody wants to, go to BitChute and watch the documentary Hellstorm. These soldiers are interviewed. That's number 2. Let's look at Article 21 of the Nuremberg International Military Tribunal Charter. Number 21, the tribunal shall not require proof of facts of common knowledge, but shall take judicial notice thereof. It shall also take judicial notice of official government documents and reports of the United Allied Nations, including acts and documents of the committees set up in the various Allied countries for the investigation of war crimes, and the records and findings of military and other tribunals of any of the United Allied Nations. But let me repeat the first sentence. The tribunal shall not require proof of facts of common knowledge. They don't give a fuck.
That's a pretty big...
about the facts.
That's an extremely big issue. Extremely big.
So now let me go to Elon's point, which he failed to give you names. And I've said this before on the show. Rudolf Höss, the head commandant of the Auschwitz facility. He was captured. He was put into interrogation. He admitted to gassing 4 million Jews. It is also admitted that, now I'm going to get to this part, they tortured him by using methods of torture so let me just reference the book. Sergeant Bernard Clark, who worked for the British government, he worked in something called the London Cage, which was also known as the 9 Cages. This was an interrogation room set up. They had it in London, and they had a couple of facilities over in Germany to which they interrogated multiple high-ranking officials, including Rudolf Höss. Rudolf Höss, and I quote, by him bragging about it, which is documented, ladies and gentlemen, in the 1983 book, Legions of Death, not a pro-Nazi book, where Sergeant Bernard Clark bragged about beating Rudolf Höss and, quote, destroying his testicles beyond repair to extract the confession, which he didn't even write but signed, against Geneva Convention, another war crime that they admitted to doing.
We know this.
Many other government officials, they threatened to send their families over to the Soviet Union, to which obviously they would have been raped and murdered or spent the rest of their life in a gulag.
We know this stuff happens
They
all the time.
Go ahead.
This stuff happens all the time when people confess to stuff. You know, I'm very public about my former police chief. Have 2 women in prison right now because they were bullied and harassed into admitting to confessions to crimes they didn't commit. Murder. So I know this happens all the time. Plea deals. All right, well, confess to this crime, we'll drop these charges. So none of this surprises me at all.
Yeah. Well, again, I want to give more evidence of this, and I'm glad we have an extra couple minutes with this podcast. Claims of abuse of prisoners were made by both German and American defense attorneys, notably by the German Rudolf Auschner and the Americans George Froschman and Willis M. Everett. However, the official U.S. commissions that investigated the reports More substantial through it was response of Edward L. Van Roden, U.S. Chief of the Military Justice Division for the European Theater, who together with Justice Gordon Simpson of the Texas Supreme Court was appointed in 1948 of abuse with the trials in Dachau, and to which Germa Rudolph, this isn't a revisionist who is still alive today, quotes extensively from his report, quote, American investigators at the U.S. court in Dachau, Germany, used the following methods to obtain confessions: beatings, brutal kickings, knocking out of teeth, breaking of jaws, mock trials, solitary confinement, posturing as priests, limited rations, spiritual deprivations, and promises of acquittal. We won the war, quote, we won the war, but some of us want to go on killing. That seems to me to be wicked. These are written by the Americans talking about the Nuremberg trials, not to mention that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court at the time, Harlan Fiske Stone, again, the American Supreme Court Justice, Chief Supreme Court Justice, called the Nuremberg trials a fraud, as well as an Associate Supreme Court Justice, William O. Douglas, called the Nuremberg trials a fraud. Also, Senator Joe McCarthy and I believe the Senate Majority Leader at the time, his name was Robert, I forget his last name. They were both against the Nuremberg trials as well. Also, there was other government officials that called it a farce, called it a joke, and called it a kangaroo court. So, again, that's all I want to say about the Nuremberg trials. We're limited with time. There's so many things people need to research themselves. As Elon told you, and I agree with Elon, you should research it. It's all documented. And these things prove that it was bullshit. And again, you have admitted testimony or bragging from British and Americans that they tortured the confessions out of these people. And again, one more thing. 4 million Rudolf Haas admitted to? A mathematical impossibility to which the Auschwitz facility itself and its curator, Dr. Franciszek Pieper, along with the Polish government, reduced that number that Haas admitted to down to 1 million. Because again, ladies and gentlemen, it is a motherfucking mathematical impossibility. Go ahead, Scotty.
Sure. This morning I'm driving back from West Virginia and I'm listening to the Rants of Izzo show from Monday. And this one, Dominic, I'm going to compliment you. I thought you asked a lot of great questions, and I thought it was a decent discussion. And you answered questions that he had that I thought you gave great answers to. When he was asking you about, do you think slavery happened? You said, well, yes, but I have questions. And then when he asked you about the Holocaust, you said the same thing. I have questions. And my initial thought of the podcast was he seems to be emotional about this topic.
Sure.
And which I understand. He's Jewish. And then I'll get comments and messages about Matt. He seems to be emotional about this as well. And I think with Matt here, I don't want to speak for him, but the rebuttals I've made to people that ask me about Matt and his take on certain things is about the truth. I think he doesn't like the fact that he feels like we've been lied to about a lot of history, not just this. And we come to slavery, Dominic, you're absolutely right about that. I was taught the same thing you were about slavery, that the South owned slaves, the North didn't, and that wasn't the case. That was just like today. The left gets on about the 1%, the one percenters. That's what it was in the South and the plantations. Only the really wealthy owned slaves. Well, I also wasn't taught that blacks owned slaves as well. There were black people that owned slaves as well. And in the North, there were multiple states that had slaves. In fact, Abraham Lincoln offered the Corwin Amendment, which would allow these states to keep their slaves during the Civil War. I wasn't taught that either. Also wasn't taught that Abraham Lincoln met with black leadership post-Civil War and discussed possibly shipping the slaves either to South America or back to Africa. He thought that would be the best solution. I was always told that Abraham Lincoln was the hero, the greatest president ever to live. He stopped slavery, Emancipation Proclamation, all that stuff. So Just because you question the events of the Civil War and slavery doesn't mean you're a slavery denier, though no one ever is labeled slavery denier. You are labeled Holocaust denier. And he used that several times in the podcast on Monday, which you're just presenting that argument, which is I'm allowed to question things here. And he's saying to you, yeah, that's fine. You can question, but I want to know your intentions behind questioning it. My only intentions with this is the truth. I just want to get to the truth. Have we been lied to? It looks like we have. We've been lied to about a lot of things. It looks like we have. But I thought that him telling you to do your research, he kept saying, well, you haven't listened to or you haven't researched the Nuremberg trials. You haven't done this. You haven't done this. What documentary have you watched? And he kept saying that Europa was some bullshit propaganda documentary. Well, there's plenty of other documentaries that you can watch to get the other side of the story, because my mom, who's a college professor, she always told me there's three sides to every story. There's yours, there's theirs, and then there's the truth. And the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. So it seemed to me is that he wanted you to research what he wanted you to research. Like here's the sources that you should go to research this. Don't go to that. Don't listen to that documentary, that propaganda from 2017, which Matt watched in 2018 and 2019. He's watched plenty of documentaries, but there's plenty of documentaries on the other side too that you can watch about the Holocaust. But we all grew up watching them. We've all seen movies like Schindler's List. We've all seen that. So can I get the other side of the story? That's all that we're asking for. Can it get the other side of the story? And just questioning certain things. He brought up the Red Cross coming in and trying to find evidence of genocide. There being cameras there that the Germans, they detailed everything. They kept records of everything and all this other stuff. I didn't hear him bring up the International Commission of the Red Cross initial death count across POW camps. And that's the other thing I have a problem with too in researching this. And also Patton, he in the Patton discussion, when you brought up Patton, he denied
I've got those. I've got those clips. I got some more for you guys.
Okay, but so the International Commission of the Red Cross, the original death across prison POW camps in Europe, the initial count was 271,000.
That's correct.
And so you can find that. That's the initial camp. That's the International Commission of the Red Cross. I can post it to my story, Dominic. I can send it to you. That's what it was. That's what it was.
Also, he brought up the census. He's like, well, the census. The World Almanac Census from 1933 to 1945, now they used that number because that's when Hitler took power in 33, increased the population of Jews. It's documented. Not only that, but in multiple newspapers, even the Jewish-owned New York Times, as well as other census bureaus within publications, all have the Jewish population increasing post-World War II.
So there's in my interaction with this gentleman in the DMs and the direct messages, initially he was a little bit, I would say abrasive maybe, but he still with a certain level of professionalism. He did criticize our podcast. He said we should give up. And then he did ask to be on it. And he said, what do you want to talk about? And I have the receipts here. I kept all the messages, obviously. He's not going to deny this because we're sharing the same direct messages on this one. He said, well, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about that. He wanted to dictate what we're going to talk about if he did come on after criticizing the podcast and saying we should just give up and stop. And then, of course, recently he did message me and asked me to be in this documentary that he's making about people that are denying the Holocaust, which I said, politely, I said, well, look, my specialty in this conversation is more about, I'm the biblical scholar of the two. Matt, I even referred to him. I said, if you want to look at World War I, World War II conversation podcast, Matt did a great conversation with author and historian James Perloff, who's Jewish, by the way. And they did a 2-hour podcast about World War I, World War II. And then he responded with, he must have looked up or Google searched James Perloff. He goes, I don't know if James Perloff is Jewish. He claims to be, but he looks like he's from like Ukraine or.
Well, he's half Ukrainian, half Jewish.
Right.
His dad's full-blooded.
Right.
I thought you're not allowed to question, though. I thought you're not allowed to question things. Maybe do full research first, get his birth certificate, then form your opinion.
But the podcast, Matt asked him directly. He said, what is your background? What's your ethnicity? And he said, I'm this on this side, and on my mother's side, I'm Jewish. Which
father's side is
Jewish and his mother's side is Ukrainian. So it's in his own words. He said it. He's half Jewish, but that doesn't matter. The truth is that we are just trying to get to conversations where we can have we can politely disagree on things and go back and forth. He seems to be the only one name calling here. He seems the only one putting labels on.
Yeah, you guys are my little buddies, and that's how that goes. Yeah. I want to continue
I'll
with
take that. I'll be your little buddy.
Well, listen, real quick, Dominic. This is why I come on. I am as detailed and specific as possible.
Yeah, he names
I
names.
give you names. I can give you dates. I can give you situations, events, documents. I will give you this. I'll give you sources. Okay? For you to look up. Here it is.
Right.
This is why he admitted it. This is the book.
That's why
he doesn't give you anything.
No, that's why I said I've listened.
He's given you. Yeah, go ahead.
That's why I said I've listened to you, what you've said. See, I can get past the volume of the voice, right? Because that's my thing. You know, people don't. It's like you get so hyped up, they lose. You hate all cops. No, I don't. Listen to what I'm saying instead of how I'm saying it. Same thing. You weren't going from October 8th of 2023. Fuck the Jews. Fuck Israel. You weren't saying that. Other people were, and they immediately shut me down. Where I'm like, I have no interest in hearing from you. I don't want to hear what you have to say. I don't care how big your platform is. I don't care if you're an MMA fucking fighter. I don't care if you're Stu Peters. I don't give a shit about what you're saying because of how you're delivering it. You, volume of the voice was one thing, but you never forced your views or criticized my lack of interest in this. You presented the food. It was my choice to eat. And after it, I went, okay, I'm going to have some food because of the way it was presented. I want to continue with what he says here. And we got a couple more clips on this. Turn my volume. See, this is why I need a producer. Very telling. And all of a sudden it's being threatened. The very same thing that tons of conservatives, including myself, are saying now. I've said publicly, fuck every single illegal criminal migrant in America right now. Deport them all. That's me being an America first, American nationalist.
Okay, but again, if we started genociding the migrants, that would not be a great thing.
And I'm leading up to.
But can I? Okay, you spoke for a long time. Here's the deal. Number one, Jews were not foreign to Germany. They fought in World War I. Jews were incredibly patriotic in Germany. The very argument, by the way, that Jews could manufacture, by your own statement, manufacture the Holocaust, but did not have enough money to go to other countries because they didn't have a large enough dollar amount, is completely contradictory. They're mutually exclusive. All these conspiracies, Jews were controlling the world, but they couldn't stop Hitler. Jews control the world, but they're the number one group of hate crimes. Jews want to spread communism, but they suffer tremendously under Stalin. Are there some Jews that want to spread communism? Sure. Are there some Christians that want to spread communism? Sure. I don't think anyone argues that Hitler was an incredibly charismatic individual. That's how he
huge
lobbied the entire country to kill more than 6 million people. There's 1 million gypsies. They're relevant too. He had a eugenics program for people who were disabled. And again, none of it's denied by Germany itself. None of it's denied by the people who carried out the acts. There's hundreds of hours of footage. There are literally, I don't know how many are alive anymore, but there were countless victims of this who all had to be in secret conspiratorial agreement of how they were going to present these stories, despite the internet not existing at that time and them never having met. It's just such an absurd claim. It's fine to question it, but if you're going to question it, then at least be genuine about your questioning and say, you know what, I took the time to go research the Nuremberg.
Yeah, I don't need somebody telling me what my intent behind questioning is, but I wanted to play that because apparently no German denies it. And Jews were an integral part of their culture to begin with, and they were from there. So whatever nationalist patriotism that Hitler and all the other the Germans who had this a feeling about Jews, it's delusional. It's mass delusion.
Okay, number one, a lot of Jews were from Germany. As a matter of fact, they lived there very comfortably during World War I. Karl Marx, the Jew, the communist manifesto author, along with Friedrich Engels, studying under Moses Hess, all from Germany. Okay? Did they fight in World War I? Probably. They liked it there. You want to know why? Because they were anti-Russian Tsar Nicholas. As a matter of fact, even the Jewish-owned newspapers sided with Germany in that war, World War I, because they wanted to see him beat the Tsar. And I'm going to give everybody again Go to it might even be on YouTube. It may be. You can listen to a speech by a guy named Benjamin Friedman. He's Jewish. He's a Zionist. He then denounced Zionism and converted to Christianity. He has a speech in 1961 at the Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C., where he goes through the entire Jewish involvement of the Jewish people and Jewish support for World War I in Germany, and then they turned on them after the Balfour Declaration, done by Lord Balfour and the richest man in the world, Lord Rothschild. They got Palestine out of the deal. That's how they got America in the war. Okay? Number two, if he didn't genocide anybody. That's number one. So he gave you a trope that there's no evidence to. I'm going to say it again. Not one speech, not in his book Mein Kampf, not one German officer, high-ranking official, anywhere, ever in the history of Germany, did they ever say, write, or order any Jews to be exterminated. Ever. None were found. No orders.
What was the final solution?
The final solution, I told you this before on one of your shows. It was, if you look it up, it was the literal expatriation of Jews to send them to Palestine, Havar transfer agreement. When the war started, they couldn't do that anymore because the British controlled that. They weren't allowing them to come in. So they had an idea to send them to Madagascar, which was a couple other places, but Madagascar.
Ethiopia was even on the table.
Yes. And Madagascar is like an island paradise.
Right.
It was owned by the French. I think they might even got permission. I can't remember, but they had permission. But then the war started and they couldn't do that anymore. There were Jews in Germany still owning businesses, still living. Okay. If anybody ever read Mein Kampf,
have you?
No one's denying. Yes. Yeah. No one is denying that Jews were citizens. If you read his book, his main problem was he was upset that they didn't consider themselves Germans. They would never consider themselves Germans first. So, Dominic, let's put this into perspective. Let's just say any foreigner comes here from another land. Let's just say they come from Mexico. I'm flying my Mexican flag. Fuck America.
I'm celebrating Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo. Fuck La Raza. Mexico. Fuck you, whiteys. Arabs, the same way. Muslims. Well, wait a minute. You live in America. You should have allegiance to America.
They still have affection for their homeland, quote unquote.
Correct.
More than here. Far more than here.
His main problem, if you read his book, which Elon told you to, I wonder if he even read it. This was his main problem with them. Not all of them. And I hate saying that, but this is what he says in his book. That they didn't consider themselves German. They didn't adhere to German culture. They didn't adhere to any type of German patriotism. Love for the fatherland, what that word comes from, pater, patriot. Pater means father. Love for the fatherland. That's where patriotism comes from. They weren't patriots. Until the end of the war, there were still Jews living in Germany with businesses. Not every single one was rounded up. There was less than 1% of the population were Jews. There was only about 500,000 that lived in Germany. That's it. I don't even know if there were 6 million Jews in all of occupied Europe during the war. I really don't. So that was his main problem with them. And again, I do want you to listen to Elon and read Mein Kampf, read the Nuremberg transcripts, read the background to the Nuremberg trials, read what everybody said about them, read about all the interrogations. I have all this stuff documented. I can send you the sources, all documented. It is the most well-documented or a very well-documented event. There were no gas chambers. 4 people went there to Auschwitz, which, by the way, Dominic, is the only facility to which the Holocaust promoters, they admit that was the only one with gas chambers. All the other ones, they found out were a lie and they discredited them. They don't even promote that anymore. They only say Auschwitz was the one with gas chambers. Fred Leuchter went there and had to testify in court. He went there to investigate, and Fred Leuchter is a specialist in gas chambers in America and execution equipment. He believed in the gas chamber Holocaust theory.
That was the Ernst Zundel case?
Ernst Zundel trial, 1988 in Canada.
This gentleman did bring up a court case in the UK, I believe.
Yes, that was with David Irving and Deborah Lipstadt. David Irving tried to sue her for defamation because David Irving presented all the evidence that gas chambers didn't exist. So Deborah Lipstadt somehow caused him to make money because of his books. So he tried to sue her for defamation, calling him all these names. Well, of course, the judge just ruled against him. He didn't debunk. He said, it was like they debunked everything. They didn't debunk one single thing he said. Not one was debunked. His whole premise was he debunked the gas chamber Holocaust theory. He debunked it all. If you're going to make this wild accusation that all these people were killed by gas chambers, the burden of proof is on you. And there is no fucking proof.
The maternity ward is what got me. And then the patent stuff. Well, you brought up the patent letters to his wife, which you're accurate to do so, because in the letters to his wife, Dominic, he makes some very just non-flattering comments about Jews and the way they like to be around each other and live. They were living in quarters. He said that they actually preferred to live in kind of this filth. That's what he said to his wife. But in his journals, there's a book out there by a mainstream guy. His name's Bill O'Reilly. He used to be a host on Fox News. He has a book called Killing Patton. And even Bill O'Reilly makes the same statement that Patton thought we fought the wrong enemy. Now, in the podcast you did Monday, Ilhan goes, "Where did he ever say that?"
Yeah, I've got that clip too.
Listen, you can go even to Bill O'Reilly's book, but it's in his journal, not the letters to his wife. The letters to his wife, he does make comments about Jews. Now, also in the podcast you did Monday, he goes, "Where did he ever say?" He didn't say that. And then, like 2 minutes later, I had to replay it because I was like, wait a minute, is he acknowledging that he did say it or he didn't? Because
he didn't write it. That's what he claimed.
That's what he's claiming. He didn't write it, but then he said, oh, well, he felt that way because he was so anti-communist. He was such against communism that he may have felt that way. Well, if he's conceding that, yeah, he probably felt that way, nobody really argues that Patton said these things. And again, Bill O'Reilly, mainstream guy, he was a Fox News host on the 8 o'clock hour. He's interviewed Barack Obama. He's interviewed multiple presidents. Bill O'Reilly still has a show and a podcast out there today. He wrote it in the book that Patton felt like we killed the wrong enemy. He was outspoken about it. And Bill O'Reilly asserts that that's why he was killed. He doesn't think he died of natural causes because he was in a car accident. He believed that he was taken out. So we can play that clip. I'll keep talking about that.
I want to continue.
Yeah, but anyway, go ahead.
I'm gonna continue with some of the points that were brought up. Pro-slavery, because the people
but Dom,
who
you're
are
not answering my question.
I'm getting there because I'm still trying to establish a base here. You're looking at people who are in slavery to mine those lithium batteries they need. When it comes down to Hitler, and my argument was specifically this man was presented as a monster and a demon, and then you start listening to what he's saying. I hear him as a nationalist who's proud of his country, and he's got a group of people he just doesn't want in there. So my first question is, I wanted to know what the labor camps were, because if you have a group of people who are in your country, I want these people deported from mine. So my two questions are, number one,
you're again starting on a premise that Jews were foreign. They weren't. That's the very nature of the problem.
I didn't say they were foreign. I said there's a people he does not want in there. I don't know how they got there. I know that.
Why? They're German citizens. Why?
Again,
but here's the premise. You can't say I don't know how they got there. I don't know why they're there. They're Jews. So by nature of them being Jewish, you are acknowledging that Hitler considered them foreign and didn't want them there, even though they were German citizens who fought in World War I. You can't have it both ways.
So why didn't Hitler want them
there? But they were citizens.
Why did he not want them there?
Hundreds of years.
Why did he not want them there?
This is what anti-Semitism is about, Dom. Again, your whole premise was that they were foreign. Is that
so? When I did listen to Hitler's speech again, we are not allowed to be nationalists in the United States. We have to be the melting pot. You come here, and this is why crime is so rampant in the United States. And no, the Haitians aren't eating cats. Yes, they are. They're bringing their culture here. I've talked about Mexico and the rape issues because of the age of consent is different. It's culture. It's nothing. In Hitler's, the one speech that I listened to, it's only 7 minutes. The excerpt is 7 minutes. I'm not sure how the entire length of it is. But he says you can hear his irritation that the Jews, and I'm paraphrasing, consider themselves elite, God-made, above all, and they don't even consider themselves German. Well, if that's the case, why I can appreciate the argument, we don't want you here. And when I asked him, why didn't he want him here? Well, that's what anti-Semitism is. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as we are not allowed to question women who claim rape, but you're not allowed to ask them, how many drinks did you have at the bar? What were you wearing? Did you start blowing the guy and then all of a sudden stop? Well, you can't say that because no man should ever rape a woman. I want both sides of the story. You're not getting them from the pro-Jew side at all.
No, you're not. And again, to his point, just to make a statement, again, not every Jew was rounded up. Now, 90% of the communists were Jews. This is a fact. The American State Department admits this. The British government admitted it. Germany obviously admitted it. Everyone knew that the communists were 90% Jewish. This is a fact. No one even denies this. Again, Winston Churchill admitted this. Now, that being said, the number one SS man who Hitler was friends with before they took power, who literally fought the communists in the streets, was Emil Maurice. He was Jewish. He was the SS leader, number one SS man, all the way up to 1938, and then he just stepped down because he got married. Adolf Hitler's personal doctor, Dr. Theodor Morell, Jewish. 150,000 half-Jewish and Jewish soldiers fought in the Wehrmacht, which was the regular German army during World War II. There's a book written. It's called Hitler's Jews, and it's not a pro-Nazi book. It explains how there were 150,000 Jews, including high-ranking officers, field marshals. It lists them all. So don't think that every Jew was rounded up or exiled. It's not the case. That's not the case.
Yeah, one thing that I'd like to point out, Dominic, is I've only been at this podcast game for a little less than 2 years now. You were one of the first guys I ever had on as a guest, and I used to watch you before I started following this passion here to have my own podcast and to build a platform and things like that. And one of the things that I liked about you, and I had seen you actually on an interview with the gentleman that is I believe the creator of the Young Turks, Cenk. Yep. You were on an interview with him. And what I liked about you as a professional was this, that you would get invited on to somebody's platform and you would have a discussion with somebody who obviously vehemently disagreed with you and was getting you on too for maybe some clickbaits and things like that. But there's an exchange that happens with podcasts. It's I'm providing the platform, you're providing me the content. And there's an even exchange there. So someone gets to use your platform and then they come on and there's a cordial back and forth. This gentleman interrupted you several times. He wasn't very courteous when it comes to the professionalism of things. I thought he was a little adversarial at times, and I thought that as a professional, we go on your show every Wednesday. You tell us what you want to talk about, and we'll talk about it. As a professional, when he came to me and shit on our podcast, he said, it's garbage, you guys should quit, but I'll come on. I'd like to do something with you, but I don't want to talk about certain things. So he wants to set the narrative of things. And also when it comes to this topic, he wants you to accept the narrative that is out there. Watch these documentaries. Watch this. I've seen those. I've read those. My mother is a professor again at a college. I read Anne Frank. I read Corrie ten Boom in The Hiding Place. I've seen Schindler's List. I saw a documentary that was called Never Again about the Holocaust. Recently, actually, it was a recent one. It was like in 2022. It was called Never Again. That's a phrase that they use in Jewish community, never again, referring to the Holocaust. There's multiple documentaries on that side. So if I want to go on the other side and see other information, now all of a sudden I'm anti-Semitic and a Jew hater and a Holocaust denier. We've never denied that there wasn't POW camps. We've never denied that there weren't Jewish prisoners that died. And probably some maliciously. I'm sure there were, right? But why do we have to continue to accept this official narrative when we have other factual information and documentation that prove otherwise? So we have to accept. Yeah, you have to continue with the narrative. What's if Auschwitz publicly lowered their number from 4 million to 1 million? I don't understand that. So what's 4 minus 1 million? What's 4 million minus 1 million, Matt?
Can I answer? Can I answer that question? That's three.
Yeah.
That's 3 million less pairs of shoes.
But you're anti-Semitic. It's 6 million still.
apparently.
Answer was wrong.
Now, I'm going to focus on what Scotty said here. He said that Jews were killed. I'm going to go ahead and give you examples again. Everything is documented. They got all the German documents.
Well, according to him, it's the most documented event in the history of the world.
It is. And I'm going to give you some documentation that anybody can research. A soldier, an SS soldier, I believe, in Auschwitz, I believe it was Auschwitz, named Robert Reinhardt, killed a Jewish man named Abraham and his Gentile wife at the prison. He was immediately arrested and charged with murder and then put to death by the German government for killing a Jewish prisoner and his wife.
Wait a second, but why would they do that if Jews were just these dirty blood people who they needed to eradicate? I don't understand that.
Exactly right. Oh, it gets better. Another, this was a Gestapo commandant at Auschwitz in charge of like law enforcement there, named Karl Koch. He mistreated multiple prisoners, not just Jews, but multiple prisoners. He was arrested and sentenced to death by SS Judge Conrad Morgan. They put him to death. They shot him by firing squad because he mistreated multiple Jewish and regular prisoners.
Anti-Semitism.
This is all documented. These evil Nazis who wanted to kill all the Jews literally killed their own when they mistreated Jewish prisoners.
Well,
somebody explain that to me.
That's ultimately my question, and it doesn't make sense. If anti-Semitism is supposed to be the most rampant hatred of a group in the history of the world, when you had them all in one place, the Auschwitz and what other camps they have, why didn't they just immediately kill them? What labor are they producing? If you're going to have them as slaves, okay, great, whatnot. But you hate these people so much that you want to exterminate them. I can't comprehend it, and that's a question he couldn't answer. I want to continue with more to get you guys answers. Go ahead. I heard a patriotic political speech that was talking about his country being oppressed by outsiders, not Jews at this point, but the other countries, whatever other countries he was talking about. In that, to just clarify, but anybody hasn't heard it, in Hitler's speech, he does have a problem with other democratic nations telling him who they should wind up keeping in their country. He goes into the concept of saying, well, you guys have one person per kilometer area of land. We've got 138 people per kilometer land, but you want us to take in more? So that was one of my issues. I ran into another article that had Churchill's writings, where Churchill was actually trying to start war with Hitler, and that's not what we were told. Then you get George S. Patton, General Patton, who's talking about we fought the wrong enemy in World War II. So when it comes to
show
this,
me where that's actually written by General Patton and not hearsay from one of his people who was around him, and then
his
also
own letters.
He's
got his own letters to his wife.
He does not say in the letters to his right, transcribed by himself, that we fought the wrong enemy.
What does he say?
Doesn't. I don't know, but show me in the letters to his wife where he writes that. General Patton, by the way, spent a tremendous amount of time with the Germans themselves, the people. And by the way, my impression of German people is that they're wonderful people. There was a problem in Nazi Germany that led to a psychotic behavior in the population, mass psychosis. Outside of that, German people, even till today, are wonderful people. There's studies on this. Again, it's not like, and if you want to look at general.
So here's kind of a question, and I'm going to go a little bit of fantasy land. If he's right, and German people have this mass psychosis, and it changed their behavior all to believing that eradicating a specific race of people is the right thing to do. Does not that apply to every other culture on the planet? Meaning that, yeah, blacks do have a penchant for criminal violence when it comes down to them not having conflict resolution. Women do have this inability to accept accountability and responsibility for their own actions. Priests who are Catholic love to rape children. Did he just not prove that the culture has their certain type of attributes, which then could be put right back on the Jews and everything that now these people are accusing Jews of doing collectively?
Yeah, it's stereotypes.
Yeah, so
stereotypes are out there for a reason, right? Yeah. Around here, where I'm at in Pittsburgh, Shady Side, there's a large Asian population. I have black guys that come in the bar all the time, and they're like, I don't know if I should leave my car parked right there. An Asian person might hit it. And they're joking about it, but it's like, these are stereotypes that go through different cultures and different races. And the Jewish stereotype is obviously money. That's a big thing about that, but also the victims. That's a big stereotype within their community. And when you look at the history of why different countries have kicked them out, I believe the number's 109, not 109 countries, but they've been kicked out.
89 countries, 109 times.
A lot of it had to do with their banking practices and usury. That was the big thing. In fact, Charlie Kirk was recently on the PVD podcast. He even said that himself. He goes, yeah, part of the reason why Jews have been kicked out of countries is because of usury. But usury happens all over the world. And that's what he said. Charlie Kirk said. But that's one of the things. Go ahead, Matt.
No. Again, I encourage everybody to read Mein Kampf. And actually, there's a AI English translated speech, which they took from Mein Kampf, used Hitler's voice, where he talks about anti-Semitism. Adolf Hitler couldn't stand when people would be anti-Semitic. Quote, he found it distasteful. For years, he didn't like it. He couldn't believe how people could be so racist against one group of people. He literally admits this in his book. And he kept on finding more evidence out of what they were doing and what they were involved with and what these accusations entailed over like a year or two period after he came back from the war. He found it distasteful. He couldn't believe what some people were writing about them in pamphlets and newspapers. He was kind of like a cuck when you read his words. He really was against anti-Semitism. He couldn't believe people were saying these things about Jews. He literally admits this. Then he looked deeper into it, all these accusations, and he even admits that his intellect grew over his emotions. He goes, wait a minute, some of these things are kind of true, what they're doing. You know, and after World War I, when he found out who was responsible for the Balfour Declaration, the advisors to President Woodrow Wilson, like Bernard Baruch, you had people in Britain who were financing, in World War II, they were financing Winston Churchill, like Henry Straykoch, a billionaire, a gold mining magnate who had gold mines in Africa. You had Bernard Baruch bailed him out in 1938, I believe, in this, or 1929 in the stock market crash. Bernard Baruch again, and then you had Robert Whaley Cohen, another Jewish financier, millionaire, who funded and financed Winston Churchill and gave him his rise to power as prime minister in 1940. So you have multiple people involved in it. Not only that, but you have the communists. You have the rise of the Bolshevik revolution. Again, you have Leon Trotsky, Vladimir Lenin, the heads of the Bolshevik revolution. And that could not happen without being financed out of Kuhn Bank in New York City from who? Jacob Schiff, Max Warburg, Paul Warburg. They financed the revolution. This is known fact. This isn't conjecture. Anybody can research this. Anybody. When you find out who's behind communism, American capitalists. What a weird coincidence. So again, he wasn't even an anti-Semite. He couldn't stand anti-Semites. Again, listen to Alon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. Read Mein Kampf. Read the Nuremberg transcripts. I sent a video, multiple videos in the chat. This is number 8. This is episode 8 of Europa. This isn't anybody with conjecture. There's interviews, and you've seen it, Dominic. There's interviews with real Jewish prisoners at Auschwitz. They admitted to playing soccer with the Germans, having fun, laughing about it, going to the movies, a violin quartet, an orchestra, a grand piano in Block 1. I thought it was Block 10. They had a playhouse. They had a nursery. The one lady said, yeah, we got to ask the children what they wanted painted, and this nice SS guy got me the paint. And they wanted Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, so that's what we painted. At a death camp. This isn't me saying this. Jewish Auschwitz prisoners are saying this. Okay, I'm sorry, but the narrative of the Holocaust is false. Doesn't make you a Holocaust denier. The narrative, the current popular narrative of the Holocaust is not true. It's been proven. And if anybody wants to challenge anybody on it, we have contacts. Bryce Mitchell is his brother-in-law. I'm personal friends with Lucas Gage.
Bryce is good friends with Jake Shields.
Jake Shields made a announcement. If anybody wants to debate Germer Rudolph, who wrote a book on this, who was arrested after he investigated the facilities and discovered, which everybody else discovered, that there was no gas chambers. He's read the Nuremberg transcripts. He's read everything. He said Germer Rudolph will debate anybody for free on the Jake Shields program. Millions of views this will get. If Alon wants to go on, Matt Wakulik is nobody. Go on Jake Shields' show and debate Germer Rudolph. Have Elon do that. Go ahead and debate. If it's so well documented, go debate.
Yeah, Elon's not going to be able to just to go, have you read the Nuremberg trial books? Have you looked into it? He's going to say, I've looked into everything. And he's going to be able to say names and no names like Matt does that the gentleman on Monday is not going to know. And he can put you or I in a position where we're like, yeah, I haven't looked into that much, or I haven't looked into that much. This guy, you can't say that. The guy has read everything there is about this subject for the last 8 years. And he can name names, he can give dates, he can give literature. And the documentaries, sir, you want to label Europa as some propaganda? There's more than that, though. There's more than that. But again, the majority of the information on this topic,
indisputable,
but the majority of it is coming from mainstream media. It's coming from Hollywood. It's coming from pushing this narrative on us. And if you don't believe it, then you're anti-Semitic.
So
I wonder which is worse.
Get shut down.
I wonder which is worse. Is it that you have to accept, and I got to make sure I word this the way that it's going through my head. So we need to accept that a group of people could have been so far brainwashed to eradicating 6 million human beings. Now, I don't know. I one of my friends is Phil Chalmers. Phil Chalmers is the #1 serial killer expert in the world. And he actually sits down with these serial killers and he knows them personally and he interviews them and he travels the world giving speeches on it. And when you have these people who kill 5, 10, 15 people, you know, the John Gacy's of the world, like out here in my area, that's one person who has a sociopath who has no feelings about killing people. I've seen dead bodies. I've seen multiple dead bodies. I have seen dead infants. I have seen dead children. It is not a pleasant sight. If you remove the actual killing part and you gas people, so you're not involved with them, but you now have to be responsible for removing dead bodies, I do not think you can have more than a handful of people who are willing to be around that type of trauma. But Jews and Jew supporters would have you believe that the entirety of Germany is good with what they did. So, and our narrative is we have to be brainwashed to accept that everything they're saying is accurate. It blows me away that you are not allowed to form any free opinion of this without punishment. I can't believe that somebody was arrested for investigating a facility.
Whoa, yeah, multiple people.
15,000 people in jail in Europe.
Yeah, for either hate speech laws. Now, some of them are called Holocaust denial, but a lot of them, they fall under hate speech laws. Like, oh, we have this hate speech law. Like, if you have murder, okay, well, this guy's a murderer. Did he kill somebody with a hammer or a gun? You know what I mean? Hate speech, you got arrested for. What was it for? Holocaust. And a lot of these people, 15,000 within all these countries, are in prison because they openly say it didn't happen the way they claim that it happened. And again, I can go back to the Nuremberg trials with the gas chambers. Dr. Charles Larson, the forensic pathologist, on the bench or on the seat, testifying under oath in the Nuremberg court, said, quote, "Not one body did I find that died of poison gas. Almost all of them were typhus and famine." Not one body was ever found. And in the Ernst Zundel trial in 1989, even Raul Hilberg, the greatest Holocaust promoter and believer there is, was a witness. And he had to admit under oath that, no, I'm sorry, I have absolutely no physical evidence, and none was ever found to prove that anybody was gassed. He had to admit it because there wasn't any evidence that anybody could ever provide, and there never was.
In the beginning of your podcast with this gentleman, you said, I'm just questioning things. Am I not allowed to question things? And he said, no, you should question things, but what's the intention behind the questions? It's almost like you have to have the right intentions.
That's a problem.
To question these things. Who cares what your intentions are? Can I get the other side of the story, and I'll make up my mind after I get all the information? Let me get the other side of the story, however flattering or unflattering it may be to this side of the story, and then I'll make up my mind given all the facts, because I don't have all the facts right now. And I agree with you, Dominic. I don't know what school this gentleman grew up in, but in the school that I went to, we were taught that Hitler was a mass murderer. He was a crazy person. He was a fucking psychopath.
He's the Antichrist.
And I was never taught that he was just charismatic leader, ever. I was taught that he was evil incarnate, and it was the scourge of the earth, and this can't ever happen again. And that we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. We were fighting evil in World War II. That's what I was taught, just like you. So I don't know what professor or what teacher taught him that Hitler was first just a charismatic leader.
Somebody clearly who would have put themselves in danger because they would be borderline anti-Semitic. I want to do just another audio. You guys want to go a couple more minutes?
Go ahead.
No, it's because I know people's intention, right? Like, again, I asked you early on, you never answered. Why aren't you questioning slavery? You started saying, well,
I have questioned slavery.
That if it happened, you question whether slavery really happened.
I don't question what happened to the Jews really happened though either.
So you believe 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust?
At this point, no, I don't.
There you go. So you don't believe.
So, no, you're asking for if I don't question that slavery didn't happen, but I start to question, do slavery happens in the numbers of what they said, right? Because again, we were told again growing up, the entire South owned slaves. Then when you find out, you do research that really wasn't the entire South. It was actually a small percentage of wealthy people who owned slaves. And the North never owned slaves. But then you heard some people actually did. So if that's the case, slavery existed, but to the depths of what they told us wasn't accurate. How would you say to people who are doing research on Holocaust now, where people, the number is 6 million, but now all of a sudden, I'll give you an example. I think it was a couple of months ago, 2 articles came out by liberal media. I don't know if it was MSNBC or whatever it is. But first there was 120,000 surviving members of the Holocaust alive today. Fast forward a couple months, that same publication puts out, there's 270,000 surviving members alive today. So when we start to see conflicting numbers.
This is just MSNBC random, and I haven't seen these articles. You know what I mean? Like, this is where we go down the loophole of, it's very easy to confirm. Germany did its own internal investigation after the fact. Again, is Germany still controlled by the Jews? They did their own investigation. They found the numbers probably higher than 6 million. They don't know the exact number. Do people know is it 6,500,421.5? I don't know what the exact number is. It's roughly 6 million. We know this because of census documentation of the time. We know this because those Jews disappeared. We know this because, again, people can actually track their family lineages and record, this amount of my family was wiped out. And Germany documented everything in great detail. So you're asking questions. This is the problem. if I ignore all evidence, I just haven't looked at it yet. I'm not looking at any of the mainstream evidence because I just don't trust anything mainstream anymore. So all of the Nuremberg trials, all the 97 volumes and you can go look, archival footage, the closest documented footage from the time. The footage in the Nuremberg trials is both literally what was recorded by Germans in Nazi Germany, what the Americans found after, and then the trials themselves of Germans admitting to everything. Okay, which I don't know why they would do. I guess, again, the Jews have that much power, but apparently that's it. All for the spread of communism, like Europa, the last battle likes to claim. Or you're going to ignore all that and then look and say, oh, well, they had pools. And therefore, I'm going to ignore hundreds and hundreds of hours of documented footage. And I'm going to say, but they had pools. But I saw an MSNBC article in 2024 that said there's more survivors than I would have thought. They got their numbers wrong. MSNBC can't report anything properly. MSNBC is a propaganda channel. I don't care if they're talking about the Holocaust. I don't care if they're talking about Trump. I don't care if they're talking about Israel, Palestine. They're a propaganda channel. I wouldn't go to them as a reputable source of anything. I would literally just look at there's so much footage, man. It's incredible to see that people will watch one documentary and then dismiss an entire body, or go there yourself and ask the questions and come to me with every single question. I want every single question you have.
You put it in his documentary. But there's the thing. I'm going to go look at a pile of shoes and shit. I guess I was wrong about everything.
Well, to his point, the census numbers prove that the population went up. I already said that, and I can provide that later. I can send them in the chat. The most recent articles that came out was 2006. Well, the ones I posted was January 2024. 240,000 January 2024 this year. 240,000 Holocaust survivors still alive. Associated Press, wasn't MSNBC. Associated Press, which is a conglomerate.
The AP,
a conglomerate of news agencies. And then the other one was from Time magazine in 2016. 100,000 Holocaust survivors still alive. What did they do?
They increase.
They increase. They get wet like gremlins and they multiply.
Can I ask you a question?
That's not really it. I can show you multiple articles from multiple other sources where the numbers change in the hundreds of thousands over the years.
I have one question though. What do you think the average age of somebody who's a Holocaust survivor would be today?
Well, let's see here. Let's just say you were 20 years old. In 1945, 80 years, so you'd be 100 something.
Yes, that's the thing too. And how many of these survivors are we listening to that were 3 years old at the time, and they'd be in their 70s and 80s, and what would they have outside of hearsay because they have no memory of what happened?
You have to understand again. It's more detailed than that. In order to be, quote, a Holocaust survivor, the credentials you need for that is just to be a human being living in Europe during that time period.
Oh, shit.
That is literally it. And guess what? You get 1,000 Deutschmarks every month in reparations.
Shut the fuck up. What?
Look it up.
Yeah,
there's not an incentive to be a victim.
There's still reparations that are being paid out for Holocaust victims.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the slavery thing because he said that you don't deny slavery, which is a ridiculous comparison because that's a construct. You know, the Holocaust is the belief that this certain event happened a certain way. So it's not even apples and oranges. It's like apples and pepperoni. But my point is, I wonder, he brought it up. Now, I had to get these from sources. But is Elon aware that for 2,000 years that the Jews dominated the transatlantic slave trade? And again, I am going to show people how well documented this is. You ready for this? Because here we go. Now, let's just go to the Torah, which is the Bible, in Leviticus 25:44 through 66. Quote, "Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you, From them you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and can make them slaves for life. But you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly, end quote. That is from Yahweh, speaking to his Jewish chosen people. But let me just say that the Jewish supremacists today still involve themselves in a type of sex slavery. That's what the Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell honeypot was. But let me give you a few sources, Dominic, because I want to make sure I provide you substantial evidence to back up what I'm saying. Now, this is from Arnold Witzner, the author of the Jewish Historical Society, and this is on the chapter Jews in Colonial Brazil, pages 72 and 73, Scotty Sieverts. The buyers who appeared at the auctions were most always Jews, and because of their lack of competitors, they could buy slaves at low prices. If it happened that the date of such an auction fell on a Jewish holiday, the auction had to be postponed, end quote. Let me give you another source because I'm on a roll here. This is from the book New World Jewry, 1493 to 1825. This is the time period that this book is written. It is written by Selmore Liebman. Quote, they came with ships carrying African blacks to be sold as slaves. The traffic in slaves was a royal monopoly, and the Jews were often appointed as agents for the crown in their safe. They were the largest ship handlers in the entire Caribbean region, where the shipping business was mainly a Jewish enterprise. The ships were not only owned by Jews, but were manned by Jewish crews and sailed under the command of Jewish captains. That's in volume 14 of the book, New World Jewry. I'm not finished. Let me go to source number 3, written by Jacob Marcus from the book United States Jewry from the year 1776 to 1985. Page 586, Scotty Sieverts. Quote, all through the 18th century into the 19th century, Jews in the North were to own black servants. In 1820, over 75% of all Jewish families in Charleston, Richmond, and Savannah owned Jews. Almost 40% of all Jewish households in the United States owned one slave or more. Okay, that's less than 5% of non-Jewish whites owned slaves in the South, by the way, at the time. Less than 5% of non-Jewish whites, that's less than 2% of whites in all of America own black slaves. Source number 4, Scotty Sieverts and Dominic Izzo. This is from the Jewish Historical Society under the chapter Jews and Judaism in the United States, written by Mark Raphael. This is volume 14. Jewish merchants played a major role in the slave trade. In fact, in all the American colonies, whether French, British, or Dutch, Jewish merchants frequently dominated. This is no less true in the North American mainland, end quote. Source 5, Dominic Izzo, Scotty Sieverts. Source 5, A History of the Jews from Babylonian Exile to the End of World War II, written by Solomon Grazel. Quote, Jews were among the most important slave dealers in European society, end quote. Source number fucking 6, Encyclopedia Britannica, written by Jacob Marcus. In the Dark Ages, the commerce of Western Europe was largely in the hands of Jewish slave owners. Was largely in the hands of Jewish hands, in particularly the slave trade. This is in the Dark Ages. So again, you have a 2,000-year period. I can provide you more, but we're running short on time. And the Jewish Encyclopedia, I can cite sources in the Jewish Encyclopedia, and I can highlight the sections where they admit to the slave trade Also, anybody within the sound of my voice, go to BitChute and you can research videos with lectures from Professor Tony Martin, a black man who was kicked out of multiple institutions because he spoke on the Jewish-dominated slave trade in the Caribbean and transatlantic slave trade. So I wonder if he actually denies slavery. And who was responsible for it?
Well done, sir. Well done. Here's another one that I got from the podcast on Monday. Dominic, was that when you Google search, the greatest genocide, that always comes up. And he made the claim, well, what happened in the Soviet Union under communism wasn't a genocide. Right. But there's one specific event that did take place from 1932 to 1933. We've mentioned it many times before, and that's the Holodomor. The Holodomor was the forced starvation of 7 to 10 million Christians.
Ukrainian Christians, yeah.
Right. And that happened all within 1 year, not a 4-year span. There were 6 million.
Scotty,
you can make the argument.
Scotty, yep. Break that down for a second. So that was Ukrainian people. Who forced starved them?
It was the NVG.
Well, Stalin had a collectivization program. He was to take all grain, all food from the Ukrainians, all of them. There was a huge problem there. They were so broke because they were communists. So they just took everything, and instead of just killing them, they just said, we'll just fucking starve them to death. We don't have to do anything.
Right. That's a genocide, is it not?
They put
100%.
Yeah, 100%. And the UN even recognizes the Holodomor. Their number's a little bit lower than 7 to 10. I looked it up. It's on the UN website. It's 5 to 7 million, but they don't recognize it as a genocide. They don't.
Literally a genocide. It's literally a genocide.
Yeah. So whether it's 5 to 7, 7 to 10.
I can cite multiple Ukrainian documents, multiple sources from other European publications that it's 7 to 10 million. Some even have it as high as 11. But
right, but what they did was they put guards in the field because the citizens were going to get grain. They're going to get food. They were starving, but they would put guards in the field, and if you went into the field and tried to get grain, they'd shoot you. It was the Cheka and the
Cheka and the NKVD.
NKVD. Those were the guards that they put in the field, and they would shoot them on sight if you tried to get any grain or anything.
People resorted to cannibalism and were eating each other. They were digging up bodies out of the ground and eating them. Right. They ate all their pets.
The thing for me is I don't understand why the number 6 million is so important for people to hold on to, that it can't be anything less than that. Well, who cares if it's less? I mean,
6. What does that sound like to you?
Well, another thing is poison gas. Now, Zyklon B is the proposed gas from the Holocaust exterminationists. Zyklon B it's a pesticide. It says right on the fucking can. They were using it during World War I to get rid of lice. It's a pesticide, like Raid, like DDT, actually. It was meant to kill bugs, not people. And in the British intelligence archives, which anybody can go to, Adolf Hitler had 30,000 tons of sarin and taboon, which are deadly nerve gases that kill you on the spot. Which, by the way, he signed the Geneva Gas Accord and promised never to use them. And he didn't. He could have crushed the United States on the shores of Normandy with gas if he wanted to. But he honored his commitment to the Geneva Convention and said, I will not use poison gas unless it's used on me first. 30,000 tons of sarin and taboon.
I want to
never use
Matt. I want to ask. I want to close down and ask. When Germany surrendered, so allegedly you have Hitler killing himself in his bunker, which I don't think happened. I think that a majority of them did escape to Argentina. I do believe. Clearly, you have the United States taking many of them. Operation Paperclip. But I want to talk about the whatever treaty or what was signed by Germany. After they acknowledge their surrender, right? So they surrender. This is why I'm asking. They surrender. What were they at risk of losing if A, they didn't surrender, B, they didn't surrender the terms that the Allied forces wanted? were they in a position to sit there and go, fine, dude, fuck it. We'll acknowledge everything. We'll write it down on paper. We'll sign it, and it'll be in the annals of history that the Germans did this. Just don't fucking wipe us off the map. With the map. Was there anything like that could have put them in a position to being leveraged?
There were two plans. Henry Morgenthau, who was the Treasury Secretary under FDR Truman, he had what was called the Morgenthau Plan, which was literally, and I mean this literally, you can look it up, starving them to death to where 75% of the German population would just die. This is what he wanted to do. They ended up going with the Marshall Plan, which was basically a denazification program to brainwash all of the current residents. They burned all their history books. They took everything down. They made everybody denounce the Nazi Party, the National Socialist Party, and they basically brought in British approved and American approved textbooks, history books. They completely took over that country and rewrote everything and basically re-educated the population. But don't think that, Operation Paperclip was only these certain guys that they took. They ended up executing hundreds of thousands of people, including female secretaries that were just secretaries to SS officers. They killed them, and not to mention the mass rape of the Soviet Union. You can look this up. It's the greatest mass rape of women in history of the world, where they entered Berlin and also Czechoslovakia, Austria. They came in and they raped over 2 million women, including 8-year-olds all the way up to 80. This is all documented. And don't get me wrong, British and American are guilty of this as well, but the Soviets, they take the taco on that one. They raped to death over 200,000 women. To death. Some women knew that the Soviets were coming. They just committed suicide, and that's why Goebbels killed his kids, and supposedly Hitler killed his children. They knew that the Soviets would rape them to death and do whatever. This is why they killed their children. A lot of people ended up killing their children. They didn't want them to be subjected to such horror and evil. Women were being raped 60, 70 times a day. I can show you videos of Russian soldiers admitting to this on camera. In interviews. Anybody with the sound of my voice, watch the documentary Hellstorm. It's only about an hour and a half. It has to do with all of the atrocities and war crimes done by the Americans, the British, and the Soviets. And there's interviews with British soldiers, Russian soldiers, American soldiers.
Where can I find that?
BitChute. Go to the platform BitChute, and you can find Hellstorm. There's interviews with these people. Again, it's not some crazy person saying this. It's literally the motherfuckers that were there admitting to it on our side.
Okay. Are you going to go on his documentary?
What's that?
No, he did. He reached out to.
He's going to edit what he wants out and make us look however he wants to look.
For sure.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, would you be willing to have a conversation with the guy on a podcast?
No, he's done. If he can't, I'm not going to have a conversation with somebody who refuses to accept basic math. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Or doesn't allow you to question, or has a problem with you questioning things.
Forget it.
That's your Wednesday show. Appreciate you guys sticking around for a little while longer. Guys, what do you guys have coming up on the Burn Pit podcast?
Monday, we have Dr. Alan Zabrowski coming back on. He's been a previous guest, but he's 82 years old. He's sharp as a tack, and he's going to come on and give us a little history lesson. He's got a wealth in his background of knowledge when it comes to education. He was a professor
He's a doctor.
He's a doctor, but he's a professor at Johns Hopkins. He was a professor at the Army Warfare College. He's 82. Again, he's 82, and he's so sharp, man. Dr. Alan Zabrowski. You can check him out on Twitter if you want to find him on X. It's Dr. Alan Zabrowski. He's really good.
Fantastic. Don't forget, check out the Burn Pit podcast live Mondays at 4 p.m. here on Spreely TV. Check out All Things Speak Freely over at Spreely.com. Download the Freedom Hub. And, as always, do your own research. If you got any questions, Maddie Wack and Scott Severs can both be found on social media. And just don't believe the pile of shoes. It's as simple as that. Guys, have a great damn day. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Lola's back in studio. We're going to have a conversation with her because she was watching this today. So we'll see what she has to say. See you guys later. Go help somebody. If you can't help them, don't fucking hurt them.